The Heilpern Show. Sponsored by Step Finance, your go-to DeFi portfolio manager on Solana. Luno, if you're just getting into Bitcoin, it's the perfect place to start. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Heilpern Show. As usual, it is powered by Icon Plus Capital. They're a VC firm, and it is sponsored by BlockFi. So I'm very excited to get into this. We are talking about one of my favorite stories. I think it is definitely actually my favorite story when it comes to crypto, especially in the last 2 years. So joining me on the show today is Jaime Rogozinski, the founder of WallStreetBets. Jaime, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you doing, Layah?
I'm good. When I say what happened last year with the whole Robinhood scandal, that was one of my favorite things I've ever seen in this space. I have to be honest.
Well, it's certainly one of the craziest things that I've seen as well, right? Like you've seen a lot of efforts throughout the years where people of WallStreetBets decide to do some shenanigans, and they're extremely clever and they're building on this knowledge. But as they grew in size and in knowledge, they were able to pull off really what is the perfect storm.
Absolutely. So for those that don't know, I know you've probably told the story a bunch of times, but there's more people that haven't. There's still plenty of people that haven't heard it. So just briefly give us the overview. We'll start with what is WallStreetBets? Give us the overview of WallStreetBets first.
So WallStreetBets is a community. It's most notably known for the subreddit called WallStreetBets, but it's grown to have this omnipresence all over social media. So it's kind of like a mindset, a community of people that hang out and use the markets in a way that's really high risk, or as the name implies, like a casino, right? They're trying to find these high propensity, high risk, high return trades. And oftentimes that results in people losing money, but oftentimes it also results in people making crazy amounts of money as well.
And just over a year ago, the community decided to take on Wall Street because you guys were sort of tired of feeling like the little man and you wanted to have some fun. Is that a good way to phrase it?
You know, that's kind of how the media ended up playing, because it sounds sexy that way, right? Like you have the retailers, you have the David and the Goliath, and it sounds nice like that. It's true. It's definitely not true. But like throughout the years, as WallStreetBets continued to grow, you'd have a lot of instances where they'd say, "Oh, look, I just found this really cool what's called arbitrage opportunity," which is a fancy word for like a relatively low risk free money type trade. And they would really creative, and sometimes they would take tremendous amounts of risk, not so much with the actual risk return of the trade, but getting in trouble with regulators or brokers because they would basically find kind of like loopholes. So what happened with GameStop was you have this guy, Keith Gill or Deep, I don't know if you can curse here, effing value.
Like, I think you can. It's up to YouTube.
Okay. Or Rory and Kitty on YouTube, he had this philosophy. He said, I like GameStop for all these different reasons. Took this massive like $50,000 trade using stock options, which is pretty risky. And all of a sudden his trade starts making a lot of money and it starts getting a lot of attention and people start piling on. And then all of a sudden the hedge funds come out and say, oh, we're short, this thing is not worth anything, the pandemic, blah, blah, blah. Right. And so you start getting to the stage of all the people on one side being kind of challenged, right? Like, and the hedge funds on the other saying, you can't touch me. This is my playground. You can't, there's nothing you can do here. Right. And sure enough, they ended up making so much money. Like they bought the stocks and they did it very sophisticated with stock options, with gamma squeezes. Like it was a lot more than just people purchasing stocks. And it ended up basically taking the price of GameStop from was about $5 earlier, or the year prior, about $40 at the beginning of last year, all the way up to like $500. It was the highest they got in the after hours trading. So, obviously that cost a lot of money to the hedge funds because they had to close out their short positions.
About 70 billion, I think.
Yeah, it was 70. Well, that's a lot. Okay.
What was it?
I don't know. Yeah, 70 billion just sounds like a lot. It's very possible, right? Like I don't know what it was, but it definitely was in the billions. I know that much. So, it was this idea of finally the retail people are here. You have to pay attention to us, make room for us at this poker table. We may be belligerent, but we can push your chip stack around.
Yeah, it was just truly fascinating. And I think the fact that, Robinhood started halting the trading, so people couldn't actually, they couldn't buy. They could sell, but they couldn't buy. What was the atmosphere like on Wall Street Bets at the time? Because I'm not part of the community. I don't actually use Reddit. So what was it like?
So, this thing with Robinhood stopping trading, it's this kind of it's a misconception as to what happened. Yes, they did stop trading, and so that fact is correct. But oftentimes it's painted as, well, the little guys were winning. Robinhood had to put a stop to the bleeding, and there's enough conspiracies that you can link the way that Robinhood gets their money to one of these payment for order flow companies. That's the one that handles these transactions that ends up bailing out one of these funds. So there was just definitely a lot to work with, but at the end of the day, it was a regulatory issue, and all brokers had to basically stop trading GameStop, right? Like, this is a thing that's complicated. It deals with the settlement process and how it takes forever. And then, these clearinghouses require collateral from these really volatile stocks. So like Robinhood had to come up with like $3 billion overnight to be able to allow trading, right? So and they did, and they effectively did come up with $3 billion. But during that 24-hour period, they had to stop. But that doesn't stop them from being, to some extent, guilty of not foreseeing this. Certainly it was one of a kind incident, but still they should have seen the writing on the wall, maybe had more cash on hand. Who knows? Yeah. The feeling on Wall Street Bets was absolutely like, what are you doing to me? And it was all against Robinhood, mainly because Robinhood was the biggest broker that people were using. And there was definitely a lot of animosity.
Yeah, I mean, it was good fun for the whole community, just to, people who were sort of, I don't mean to say anti-establishment, but like anti the traditional way of doing things, right? And want to take the power back in whatever way. It was good fun for us to sort of see that narrative play out, see, really just Wall Street push an entire generation into whether it's crypto or decentralization or whatever
it feels good to be empowered. You have younger people as a whole. I mean, even from when you're a child, it's like you can't eat your candy before dinner. You've been told kind of what to do. There's very little influence you can do. Maybe throw a tantrum. Who knows? And then when you're in high school, maybe college, it's like, I want to be able to do these things, but I don't have the money, whatever. And the boss has to tell me because I'm a junior level. You're just used to being the nobody in the scene. Yeah. And this particular group of people, which was young, had been marginalized by the 2008 financial crisis. You have a lot of people with this mindset, and sometimes you see people go out and protest. Sometimes people do different things. And this was like this really clever way of hitting these banks where it hurts. You had the 2008 financial crisis where people were occupying Wall Street and they put their tents up there and they lived there forever. And it didn't do anything. It was just got some attention in the news. It didn't elicit any type of change, but this was effective, right? And this was, hey, look, there is a way to be heard. And absolutely, it felt really good. And of course, you have the component of the rivalry, right? Like, people in general are tribal, right? They like to be Republican or Democrat, or they like to go for, one football team or the other football team. And it's always going to be, I'm going to beat you at whatever it is. Now you had a good guy and a bad guy, and it was the hedge funds that were
perfect story,
put their face out there, and these people that were really enjoying beating them.
It's just the perfect story. But I'd like to get some of your background, because I know you do have a background in traditional finance. So you have a natural finance background. Is that right?
Sort of. I studied a dual major, economics and computer engineering, and then eventually, once I started. It was actually it was around the time I started Wall Street Bets that I'd started a master's in finance. I figured, hey, the stock market, you literally click things and you make money, and it's kind of like a video game, and it really is. So I'm going to study finance so that I can figure. And so then I'm learning about discounted cash flows and, like time value of money and these crazy concepts. I'm like, okay, well, which point do you tell me whether to short or long the stock, right? Like, yeah. And there was none of that. There were just math equations that really didn't apply. And when I would try to apply it, it's like, well, Apple's valuation according to the book value, do these Excel analysis, and all of a sudden Apple's doing crazy things because whatever president tweets or things that have nothing to do with my Excel. So I'm like, all right, well, that was a waste of time. All right, I'm just gonna figure out how to play with the stock market by just using it like a game. And so while I do have that formal background and the formal understanding of finance, I also have the hands-on experience of saying, like, look, in the long term, you can apply some finance rules if that's how you want to do it. But if you're just looking to make money or play or experiment or whatever it is, like you're looking at a line that goes up and down on the screen, and based off of a gut feeling, or if you've stared at enough charts, you kind of get a feel for whether it's going to go up or down.
Are you looking at like the fundamentals of a company, or are you looking at geopolitics? You're saying you're not looking at Excel spreadsheet. So what is it?
No, I'm not looking at any of these things. Well, geopolitics kind of, because that's catalyst type news, right? Like if you have,
Russia.
Russia's kind of a tricky one because we've already had Russia before. We've had China before. We have all these big kind of, but there's some much more specific ones that could tip the scale. Something that has to do with oil, of like, I don't know, some country decides to do whatever, and that'll shoot the price up and down. So that's relevant, but the fundamentals isn't, because my time frame is like, a couple minutes or a couple hours or a couple days at most. And a lot of times people use stock options, or in my case, futures, which are volatile. So like the fundamentals don't matter between like, 9:30 a.m. and 9:36 a.m. Right? Like these high frequency computers that also trade all day long, they're not reading discounted cash flows. They look at the statistics and how things move. And so occasionally I enjoy, for like academic purposes, reading fundamentals of the company, but I don't necessarily map that to what the stock is doing.
So if I totally understand, that makes sense. If you're a bit of a gamer, it makes sense why you would sort of see the stock market like that. I think that's a smart way to look at it. So, if you sort of dedicated your education to that, right? You said you did a master's, right? Yeah. So if you dedicate your education to that, that's a lot of money. You truly must, believe in it. So at what point did you realize that it was rigged?
No, I like I wanted to study just, when you go to school, you get this piece of paper you hang on your wall, and then you give it to the guy over there, and then he gives you a job and he gives you more money, right? That's really what it's about. Like, it's not engineering school, like computer engineering, that I really did it because I wanted to gain the knowledge, and I did believe in a lot of that stuff, and like the intellectual challenge. And same with economics. But with finance, it was literally just a professional place. Like, all right, well, I'm working the system and I got a job and I want more money, so I got to do this thing. So it was more of just this traditional type of investment in myself. But I never was a very fundamental believer of it. I probably started becoming disillusioned in like 2006 ish, thereabout, when I first started kind of playing with the stock market, and things would just do things that don't make sense, right? You have and you see it so often now. It's like, why did the price go down? They just beat earnings or whatever. It's just so frequent. I'm like, all right, clearly there's a disconnect. And you see what happens in 2008 shenanigans and all the damage that it caused, right? People actually losing their houses. These aren't no longer lines that move on a screen, or in addition to being lines, they're affecting I actually lost my job because of the 2008 crisis. So
what were you doing for work at the time?
I was working at a financial services company.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, so you have I had this disillusionment. I'm like, all right, well, this thing is clearly just a toy for people to play with. And I know that some people do this professionally, where they stare at their screen and click and make money. I would like to do that too. And I don't want to be able to depend on having a master's degree or whatever. I hedged my bets with the master's, but so that's when it became apparent. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized this really is a game. Like, you have to find cheat codes. You have to find, they have fancy words for it. Like I said earlier, arbitrage, but you can use a meme instead of, like a math formula to describe what's happening. And it can be just as effective. And so these cheat codes, and there's been lots of them that are found by these really creative people that don't want to play by the same rules. Like, here's an example. In 2019, late 2019 thereabouts, this guy figured out that on Robinhood you can basically get infinite margin, meaning like infinite buying power. Right. Okay. And so this guy it's a little technical, not too bad. He would basically buy a covered call. Like, he would buy 100 shares and sell a call and use the shares as collateral. And then Robinhood kind of screwed up the math behind what happens next, because he gets the money for the call and they didn't lock it up and blah, blah, blah. So because margin doubles your money in the account, he all of a sudden had twice the buying power. So he did it 2 more times. He has 4 times the buying power, et cetera.
Wow.
And then of course the first thing that comes up to his head is, I'm going to share this on the internet with my friends. So people are like,
Nice.
let's see who wins. And there's like the roster of who's got the
Oh
biggest
my God.
margin, and people
That's
taking out
insane.
$1 million trades. And here's the ARB on that one, right? Like the ARB is, all
Yeah.
right, fine. Now that you have $1 million, what do you bet on? They're like, I don't care. Apple earnings, who knows? Because it's not my money. The banks are too big to fail. I'm too small to collect on. So this is a free ticket. If I make money, it's mine. If I lose money,
it's whatever.
Robinhood can't come after me because they're in trouble for letting me get away with this. And so that's the type of ARB that you're not going to see JP Morgan do, because they're JP Morgan, but that's what you can see from a college kid. So, and that's what makes this a game. And that's what really does make this a lot of fun.
It's just so fascinating to me, especially because, there are these cheat codes and there is this community, which, I mean, I know we were sort of saying that the media likes to present it in a certain way, but ultimately it is sort of about, the little guy having an opportunity to make as much money as the big guy can make. So in what way do you think this is sort of going to bring a new generation into stocks? Because from my perspective, the internet, forums like yours are inspiring and educating and empowering a whole new generation, because usually this seems like something just reserved for the older guys.
Yeah, and that's always kind of been the feeling, right? This is this veil of sophistication they can hide behind. They put on a tie and a suit, and they say, no, you can't do this here. And they use these fancy multisyllabic words to try and hide the sophistication, but like, it's not. It's a line on a screen and it bounces, right? So as soon as people figure that out, they're like, oh, okay. I'd say the combination between social media, right, having people have places like WallStreetBets where people can come and chat and share, as well as the brokers that start becoming first discount and eventually free in terms of commissions. So now, and then you have things like fractional shares, so that you can buy little pieces of expensive shares if you don't have a lot of money, no minimum anything. So pretty much you got $20, you can open a broker and you can just pretty much start playing around with that. And that's pretty huge.
Yeah.
That and the interface too, it's just this gamified thing where, if you want, like Robinhood did a lot of things where they're really smart. Their interface, if you want to buy stock options, they're complicated, right? There's like differential equations that explain all these Greek values and how they move around. But Robinhood just said, hey, you want to buy stock options? Cool. Do you think the stock is what stock do you like? Apple. Why do you think it's going to go up or down? And then you answer with like a color-coded arrow, and you say up, and it says, okay, cool. The one you want is calls instead of puts. And then it says, how much do you think it's going to go up by? Right. And then you'll give it a thing. And now it selects what's called a strike price. And then it says, when do you think it's going to go up by? And then you click that button. And it says, all right, this is the thing you want to buy. And it's simplified something that is insanely difficult in like 3 easy. And then you get confetti animations. Congratulations, you bought your first stock option. Like, that's cool.
That's amazing, because I've always been sort of somewhat disillusioned with the establishment, but I never really understood finance at all. How can you, right? Like, you don't learn about it in school. So I just didn't understand it. So my way through was through Bitcoin, but I would absolutely love, I love things like that. I think that's amazing. But because they're simplifying it so much, how important would you say it is for people to actually get involved in the stock market and learn how to trade?
That's a broad question. It depends on what people want to do with themselves. Like, if I think it's important that they experiment so that they know what it's about, right? At some point, people will get jobs. They'll want to make money. They'll want to invest in their retirement. They're not going to get these like Roth IRA, these whatever index funds. Or just diversified investment. And that's cool. That works too, right? That's the responsible thing to do. If you have $1,000, you're never going to be a millionaire, right? So you can experiment to play with that. If you have, $50,000, you probably should put it away so that you can retire nicely. That's where having some experience in the stock market can help you navigate that part of your life. So in that sense, the important part is there. But there's another component, whereas people want to say, okay, well, it's not just that I want to know how to retire. I'd actually like to supplement my income or replace my income. And that's where you say, well, look, anything that's finance related is going to help you out. And playing with the stock market doesn't mean going in and understanding what these, these financial ratios of the price to earning and blah, blah, it just means reading about it, look at the stuff, buy the stock you want, right? Don't spend too much money, but just buy it, look how it behaves, figure out why it's behaving that way and get a feel for it. Don't get afraid. And that helps you get experience for all sorts of things, like the emotional component of when you lose money, like, oh no, my thing is down 5% today. Don't freak out and sell. Maybe you should buy more or whatever. And that's not just stocks, right? You mentioned Bitcoin. It's the same thing. It's just an asset whose value is driven by a number of people that are buying and selling it. And then that results in a thing going up or down. And you can basically bet if it's going to go up or down. And if you're long term, you want to do it a certain way. If you're short term, there's different ways to try and get more leverage out of your trade.
You mentioned, not being emotional about it. So if there are people out there, even like myself, who I have never touched the stock market, I'm fully just crypto. What tips would you give people in terms of, where to start?
But it's the same thing. It's no different. If you've been trading crypto, like you're not going to get a different feeling in your gut when you're losing money. The lines between
what if I want to make money though? Like, how do you do that?
Just be aware if you're making money, there's also a danger there. If you're like, yay, look what I did, I'm going to be a billionaire. You just like start fantasizing about how you just need to repeat that exactly 365 days a year. And by the time you're whatever age, you're going to have $2 billion. So, and then that gets you to do things that are also silly. So both making money and losing money is this judgment cloud. How you make money with stocks is going to be a similar answer to how you make money with crypto. If you're doing things with crypto, you can buy the coin and you can see if it goes up. Or you can start doing some of these DeFi exercises where you can buy the thing and you're going to farm it and stake it in liquidity pools and generate yields. And you can do that kind of stuff with it. Or you can do leveraged things like there's options and futures and these binary. There's a lot of creative things in DeFi. Stocks is the same thing. You have like a bunch of tools that says, all right, what do you think? Do you like this thing, this company? You think it's going to go up? Cool. Buy it and then wait and then hope you're right. And so that's like buying a coin. You want to do something a little more exciting? Check out these derivatives, check out these financial instruments, and you can do some really fun stuff, especially if you use like stock options. It's not even about guessing the direction of the price. Sometimes you can actually make money if you think the price is going to stay where it is, right? Stock options allow you to do that. You buy some and you sell some, and there's puts and there's calls, and you put this trade together in such a way that if the price stays the same way, you actually end up making money.
Right.
So it gives you more kind of outcomes that you can guess on. How to make money with stocks, if you want the real answer, like they go up, right? Like zoom out to 19 whatever, as long as whatever finance tool you like to use lets you go. And the stock used to be really low, and the stock right now is really, really high. And it crashed in 2008, and it crashed in 2000 and 1987 and 1930, whatever, 29. But then it went back up, right? So if you literally just want to invest and make money, then just buy stocks and just keep buying stocks, and you're going to make money. It's a pretty darn close to certainty thing based on the fact that basically population is growing, right? Like it's a crazy way to end up that way. But it's that same thing that you have with Bitcoin, where it's like, well, this thing is limited to however 21 million coins, and also the population is growing, and therefore you're going to have more demand and kind of a fixed supply. And that's pretty much what it boils down to.
Yeah. And then what is also huge right now is internet culture. And from my perspective, that is affecting the market, whether it's, characters like Elon Musk, for example, pumping Doge or whatever it is. So I'd love to get your take on how that there's like a shift between like serious stocks, whether it's like tech stocks, to more jokes, and how powerful that internet culture is.
It's definitely powerful, right? Like I don't think even the internet knew how powerful it was until GameStop. Yes. We'd had inklings of it before, like in 2020 when the pandemic was in full force. Hertz, the rental car company, declared bankruptcy because nobody was traveling and renting cars. so and the stock was like $2 a share. It was pretty close to zero. And so all the people from Wall Street Bets are like, yeah, you're supposed to buy low and sell high. And $2 is pretty low. It's pretty close to zero. There's a lot more numbers if you go up than if you go down. So let's buy this stock, right? Like it's just,
for fun,
flawed,
obviously.
but actually somewhat legitimate logic where it's like, yeah,
Right.
if it goes to zero, I'll lose 100%, right? Big deal.
Okay.
But it can go, it can double or triple. Sure enough, it would double or tripled. And then people are like, oh, that's cool. Then around the same time you had this, like people are like, oh, everyone has to work from home. You have to use Zoom. And so, of course, everyone says, let's buy Zoom. And the logic of buying a company because there's a lot of users is okay, but it's not complete, right? It doesn't mean that a company is going to be profitable. So serious critics are saying these guys don't know what they're doing. They just think because more customers means better business.
Why wouldn't it though? Wait, pause. Why wouldn't it? Because to me, I feel dumb for not buying Zoom stock.
No, I mean it's okay. Like that analysis is okay because it's going to mean more revenue and it gives them kind of more options if they're not profitable. But if you're in the stage of your business where you have negative unit economics, meaning like you're losing price per customer because all businesses have this kind of a J curve, the majority of them do, where they start off like at 0, and then you start losing money for every unit that you sell or service that.
Oh, okay.
And then eventually you turn into profitability. That's if you don't have your numbers correctly, then having servers are overwhelming. You have to scale up at the right time, and then the thing goes down at a bad time because you weren't right. There's a lot of things, right? But
understood, yeah.
But regardless of it, people are saying, yeah, this logic is incomplete. And then not only was that the case, these people on Wall Street Bets went out and bought the wrong Zoom because it was a ticker symbol spelled out the word Zoom, ZOOM, as opposed to the correct ticker that was ZM. So people are buying the wrong company on the wrong premise, and that stock went up like 300%. The wrong stock, right?
I didn't know this. That's wild.
So people that were saying, you silly, you guys are idiots. You don't know what you're doing. Like, you bought the wrong company. And these guys are like, yeah, but I made more money than if I bought the right company. So who cares? Go back to your suit, right? Like, we're having fun over here. We're making money. We just killed it with Hertz. We just killed it with the wrong Zoom. Let's keep killing it with whatever else we decide to find.
That's amazing. I love it. It really is empowering. But, with crypto these days, and, you mentioned DeFi and liquidity pools and yield farming and everything that's going on right now, how relevant do you think stocks are?
It's an existential question for me because I have the majority of my experience in stocks and in finance. And when Bitcoin or some of these first currencies came out, I was like, this is cool, right? My economics hat says, all right, this is an interesting concept. You have this currency and it can't be destructible and it's got scarcity built into it and it's got this technological component. So I was like, all right, well, I hope they make it. It's a cool experiment. And I was mining it at first. And then it was just difficult. And I just it was really cumbersome to use it. So then I was just went back to stocks and I just watched from the from the sidelines as the price went up, and I'm like, okay, cool, they made it, right? Bitcoin.
What year were you mining?
Oh, early, and I lost the thing,
man.
so don't worry. It was like 2013. Yeah, but I don't kick myself in the butt because if I had like 100 Bitcoins, I would have sold it when it was like $3, right? I wouldn't have waited till it was at 60. So I at least that's what I tell myself.
I agree.
So, but anyway, so sorry, people start buying pizzas with Bitcoin. I'm like, cool, they made it, right? This experiment was successful. Back to my stocks now. And all of a sudden you start seeing these other coins pop up in Ethereum, this and that, the other. I'm like, oh, cool. All right, now there's more of them. All right, interesting. But there's just numbers on the screen that go up and down. It's another asset, but it doesn't plug into my broker, so not interested. They don't no stock options on crypto, so I'll just stick to this for now and the liquidity. And so I never reevaluated that stance. I just kept assuming that it were just coins. And then I'm watching like the 2017, 18, the ICO boom. And I'm seeing everybody doing these new coins. I'm like, oh, that's annoying, right? But whatever, more coins to go up and down. It's just going to muddy the waters. And then this last year, I was approached by I got approached a bazillion times for people like, pop my coin. And then last year, this one group of people said, no, help, like come with us. We're going to do a cool thing where we're going to merge stocks with crypto. And I'm like, all right, that's something I could get behind. And so all of a sudden I popped the hood on this crypto thing. I was like, wait, guys, this is more than just coins. Did you know that you can like do this automated market? Like there's a market that's decentralized and the computer decides based off of these things. That's genius, right? Like it's different because order books from centralized exchanges have their merits, but they also have their flaws. So I'm like, how did somebody come up with these things? And then you're looking at these liquidity pools, and then I'm looking at these smart contract derivatives also, where you have these leveraged ETFs for Bitcoin or whatever these things, so that you can buy leveraged up or leveraged down. And as I start using them and experiment, I'd like to buy stuff and figure out how they work later. I realized that these ETFs that are very similar to the ones you have in the regular stock market that are leveraged, they had one different component where you have the smart contract that evaluates the condition of the underlying, so that if it's ranging, so if the price is pretty much staying where it is, the leverage goes down. And if it starts trending, meaning if it shoots up or shoots down, the leverage also gets cranked up. There's a lot of math of what happens next, but essentially that fixes this flaw that these leveraged instruments have that make them go to zero with like near 100% certainty over time, right? So I'm like, wait. Crypto has this smart like ETF that can adjust based off of rules, and that makes you more money. Like, why doesn't Wall Street have that? What's going on? And they don't close on the weekends. I knew that, right? But I felt the benefits of it.
Yeah.
Especially when Elon Musk goes out there and tweets something. It's on a Sunday about Tesla, and you have these synthetic stocks that trade 24/7. I'm like, yeah, I think I'll go short this now on the blockchain, even if I don't have the stock. Like it's a price tracker basically. But like Monday morning opens up and boom, I'm like free money. I'm like, all right. So I'm realizing this ridiculous, sophisticated, intelligent, like ecosystem where people can interact financially, and it's a heck of a lot more than just a coin whose price is up or down, right? And so then I regret not reevaluating my stance earlier on, because I think that there's a very evident trend where the lines are blurring between stocks and crypto. I'm involved currently with the WallStreetBets DApp, which does just that. Like we're creating ETFs that have like it's like a basket of mix. You can either get crypto with stocks or whatever, or just stocks or just crypto, and you can buy these synthetics or you can buy these collateralized stocks.
There'll be synthetic stocks, right? But
they're both, yeah. So right now we have synthetic stocks, and we just closed the deal, which we're launching at any moment here in the next coming weeks, where you'll actually be able to purchase collateralized stocks. This is where you buy a crypto thing, and that crypto thing represents a stock that somebody goes out and buys and passes you the dividends and the shareholder rights. Obviously, when you do that, you have to go through the KYC component, because you can't get a dividend or you can't vote on a company unless people know who you are. But it's done everything through the blockchain, and these guys trade 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is crazy. I have no idea how they do it, but they do it, and we've partnered with them, fully regulated, all these things. So it's like, let's blur the lines. And then you have ETFs in Wall Street that have, they have the Bitcoin ETF that's been trying forever. Finally got a Bitcoin's future ETF. I don't understand. Why do you say no to one and yes to the futures one? But whatever.
Got to walk before you can run, I guess.
Yeah, and so like these things are kind of blurring, and so the whole thing of, well, is it like stocks relevant, or is crypto going to be the new thing? It's like, they're going to both exist, right? They're going to be the same thing. JP Morgan, I keep reading about this metaverse thing that they're doing. And, like it's evident that the Wall Street people also realize that there's this thing in crypto, and and brokers like Robinhood, you can already buy both as if they're stocks. So that difference is kind of breaking down. But I will say this, that I'm talking, that's from the perspective of the retail trader, right? Like you and me that want to just make money. You have a component of the business, which is, why does a stock exist? And it's so businesses can raise money. At least, in theory, that's what it was created for, and can still be used for that effect. And occasionally it is. So to that effect, just say, well, no, companies are not going to stop going public because companies are going to pop up all the time and they're going to want to either raise money or pay back their early investors. And that's how you do that part. However, I'm now counting the days before companies go public on the blockchain. I mean, they already do.
It's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, they already do, but they're just not like the official, ring the bell at the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange type going public with the SEC regulation things. You have these projects, these DAOs, these NFT things, all these coins that do stuff like they're fully operational businesses, and they release their thing and they raise a lot of money with it. And then they operate like this. It looks different because a lot of these are like anonymous or decentralized or whatever, but they already happen. And there's a ton of benefits to that. So I'm waiting for the days for the next, like, I don't know, Airbnb or whatever, some official company to go on the blockchain instead of on Wall Street, because there are so many benefits to that. Like, for starters, who your shareholders are, right? Without knowing their name necessarily, but you can send them a message like, thank you, or come see my webinar or whatever, right? Like that's something that they can sort of do it, but it's really difficult for companies to know who their shareholders are. The only thing that's missing is regulatory component. I think that's the only reason why they haven't done it yet.
There's so much to unpack there. We can get into regulation and all of that. But before we do, I want to understand fully if there is a philosophical reason at all behind your interest in crypto. I know, obviously, you were sort of going through it and, you realize, wow, there's DeFi, automated market makers and all this stuff. But like, in terms of decentralization and stuff like that, do you feel a kind of passion towards, again, taking back that control, not having that centralized control, basically?
Yes and no. Bitcoin launches around the same time that WallStreetBets does, and the language around Bitcoin, obviously there's a lot of different voices, but one of the voices that was heard a lot was what you just said: decentralized, take back control, central banks, fiat printing, blah blah blah. And in my case, I was also angry at the system because I'd been impacted by this crisis. I'm thinking, all right, well, if you can't beat them, join them. We're not going to be able to beat them at their own game, so might as well make money. But the motivation was parallel, was a different approach to it, right? So Bitcoin tries to take on the system head on. I'm just like, well, let's just ride the wave along with them. There's no reason why we should fight it. And these philosophies kind of evolve. Like, I'm not a activist. I'm not a fuck the central bank or the fiat. Like, you're not going to get rid of that. And there's a lot of benefits to that. Right. I can go toe to toe with people that are knowledgeable on this and hold my own when it comes to defending the existence and acknowledging the flaws with the existing system that's set up, these centralized institutions. I get both sides, but I also get that you won't get rid of them. But you don't have to have a winner. These things already coexist, right? China tries to ban Bitcoin twice a year, and they still can't, right? And they won't be able to, because it's part of the, it's one of the features of Bitcoin is you can't just, like, there's no setting to say if China, then don't, right? Like, there's not. So you already have countries like El Salvador, and I read today that Ukraine is accepting Bitcoin. I don't know what that means.
That came out 4 months ago. That Ukraine legalizing Bitcoin.
But what does that mean? What does that mean that Ukraine accepts Bitcoin? Like, you have a wallet? I send you a wallet. Okay. Are you like, where are you? What's cool about like crypto is like, it doesn't ask you where you're living before you like use it. Right. Like it's in the US, they have some restrictions if you want to use centralized exchanges or whatever, but for the most part, like, it's just do you have an address? Is it valid? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and use it. So whatever that means about Ukraine. I think El Salvador is slightly different because El Salvador is purchasing it, right? So that's
totally different, completely different.
So, but anyway, so you have this coexisting that's taking place, and I'm cool with that. But I'll tell you what motivates me. It's not like we're gonna get rid of the powers that be, because I like the powers that be. If it wasn't because of the powers, we wouldn't have WallStreetBets. We need Wall Street in order to have WallStreetBets. But there's a lot of problems with it. I acknowledge them all, most of them. Some of them I disagree with, and let's fix them. So let's try and fix it. So, like, one of the things that I said is this thing is a casino, right? I don't think it's fun that people use this like a casino, because the last time you did that, people lost their house. I lost my job. So I can complain about it, I can bitch about it and put a tent in front of Wall Street and just hold up a sign for a few months, or I can try and make them outraged. And so one of these things that I started doing before the pandemic and then canceled it, but now restarting it, is, I'm getting this venue at a casino in Las Vegas, and it's like a big stadium type thing, and putting an esports setup where you have like these 10, 12 competitors on the stage with their computers, crowd streaming online, and these people are going to be trading with the stocks as if it was a video game, and they'll be actually trading the stocks, right? And you're going to have the guys that are saying, oh, this, he's taking the iron condor with Tesla, which is like a stock options thing, and that means that by Friday this thing has to do that, and and have people that are like a Dave Portnoy individual and like a Jim Cramer and just all sorts of characters, and just make a video game spectacle out of the stock market. And why would I want to do that? Because I think the system is broken, but I can do that. Right. It's perfectly legal. I've checked many times, obviously. So like people are pissed, like, how can these guys be using a Las Vegas casino to play with the stock market like a freaking video game?
It's amazing.
It's sponsored by esports things, right? Like, and it's because I want to elicit that change. If you don't like it, fix it. And that's my attitude. And crypto does a lot of things to fix finance, right? And it doesn't have to replace one or the other, but you can rub off on it. Like, what do I mean? Let's just start with 24-hour day trading. Like, what? That is a setting. Unlike the Bitcoin China thing, like, trading hours equals 24. Enter, compile, send, whatever, upload. Like, you get to go. There's no reason why markets shouldn't be 24/7. And I don't complain because I want to be up at 3 a.m, but I complain because occasionally China says we're defaulting with Evergrande or whatever. You have these things that happen after hours, and those are liquidity events that really screw up the system, and it causes these crazy like domino effects, and it's bad. It's systemically bad. So don't turn it off anymore. So crypto can rub off on Wall Street in that effect, and that's a good thing. You have these smart contract ETFs. They're brilliant. These are like intelligent things that actually change based off of conditions. Like, awesome. That helps people make money, not just gamble. It actually helps serious people too. You can make, I was trying to come up with I'll rewind. I give a lot of talks, right? I go to the, people invite me to come and speak to these audiences. And sometimes half the time they're crypto. The other half the time they're stocks, and they're very binary. They're hardcore on whichever side they are. And I will go to these serious investor forums, and I'll talk about Wall Street Bets, and they want to hear about GameStop, and then I'll bring up crypto because it's relevant. And then they're looking at me like, but crypto, what's an NFT? Why would I buy it? What's a thing, and why would I buy it? Pyramid scheme, whatever. And then I'll go to Bitcoin conferences or crypto conferences, and I will talk about both. And I'll talk about stocks because people are curious about the thing with the GameStop. And then they stop. They're like, what is a stock, and why would you buy it? And why is it not a pyramid scheme? Right. And so both questions from both sides is fundamentally the same. Right. Like, and they're both fundamentally right. So
it's so funny.
Yeah. So if you're able to have crypto, sorry, I remember saying, so crypto is able to actually do stuff in a much better way. Like I try to come up with an example for my stock friends of saying, well, what can you do in crypto that you can't do in stocks? I challenge you.
Yeah.
So I thought about it for a while, and I said, all right, well, I thought of these liquidity pools and these prediction markets as an example. And like, you can already today, based off of stuff that currently exists, not a hypothetical, set up a thing that if you own a ski resort, a mountain where people ski, and you're worried about the snowfall because if it doesn't snow, people don't ski, and you want to hedge against that. You can set up a thing on the decentralized smart contract, blah, blah, liquidity thing, where you say, I'm going to short sell inches of snow, and crypto has these oracles that go out and read to make sure you can trust the weather reports, and if it snows, if you're supposed to short sell 60 inches, because that's the amount you need in order to fill your mountain, right? If it only snows 30, then you can cash out your short sell of snow 30 inches, like to a very granular level, right? And the counterparty is this decentralized prediction market where It's not, you don't have the counterparty risk. Like, it's a very intelligent system. And, you know, if it snows your 60 inches, you close out your trade at a very small loss. And that's the price of your insurance policy. And like, that's done on the fly today, right? Like, do that, Wall Street. Have to fill out applications and do things, and SEC, you know, like, it's just not possible. So that's cool. And I think that's really, really powerful.
And how do you think regulation is then going to affect this?
I mean, it's in a really good way. Like, regulation, lack of regulation is the only thing holding crypto back. People,
to what extent though?
So like, what they legalized marijuana in the US in certain states, or they started by decriminalizing it. And in the US, you'd have like Colorado. They say, well, you can come to my store and you can buy marijuana because here it's legal. But the federal government says this is not legal. You can't do that. And banks are regulated by the federal government, so people couldn't use banks to operate their store, right? So now all of a sudden these stores have to take cash, and they're exposed to this kind of like crazy risk or whatever. If you went up to an investor, says, dear investor, please invest in my pot shop. The investor says, you're all cash business and you can't, like, how are you going to pay me back? Duffel bags and like, I don't. So all of a sudden you have regulate it, and all of a sudden you can use the banks. And all of a sudden, like, and there's rules. They say you can do this and you can't do that. Then everyone's like, all right, cool, I'll invest in your companies. And you have like all these beer companies that are pouring heavy money into the marijuana market, and it's growing. So regulation is going to do the same thing. If you put a set of rules and say, hey, these are the rules, you can do this and you can't do that, and you have to apply here and you need to fill out that form to do that, we can kick and scream because it's going to be more annoying, right? It used to be better than before, and now you have to do this thing, and that sucks. But thanks to that thing that sucks, now you'll have a lot of money pouring into this thing and fixing a lot of problems. And I'll tell you one of the problems that I currently still have with crypto. It is very difficult to use. When I first when I got into this thing, I was like, how do I buy my own coin, my WallStreetBets coin? Like, oh, it's easy. Just download MetaMask, and you have to set up the network so that you can have BSC, which is not to be confused like a BEP20 thing as opposed to a BEP2, because that thing is not going to make you lose. All your money goes away. If you screw that up, it's done, because China, blockchain is immutable. And then you have to open the browser inside the thing. Like, Jesus Christ, like, how do you do this? And I think in large part, that problem hasn't been fixed yet because of regulation. So is it gonna hinder certain stuff? Yes, but the number of things that it will empower is going to far outnumber. And let me point one last thing out. If you're able to say, all right, crypto is legal, but only if you use Bitcoin. Any other derivative, the only one we will allow you to do in the US is Bitcoin, and taxes and business and da. And then people are like, well, that sucks because Bitcoin, it's good, but there's a lot of better ones out there. Right. But you kind of have to sort of take that and say, all right, well, now I'm going to make my Bitcoin Amazon or whatever, like some big ass empire. And now you're making a lot of money. And now you're like, I really hate Bitcoin because it's screwing up my transactions. I'm going to take some of my billions and I'm going to put a lobbyist right in front of Washington. I'm going to ask him to allow us to use Ethereum now, something that we all really know, but we haven't been able to do because we don't have that formalized structure. And next thing you know, you'll have these lobbyists and interest groups, all these things, and actually doing these things, and they'll have to fix legislation. I had this one idea that I love. I was like, why don't we just give Congress, all members of Congress, an NFT and say, hey, hold on to this thing. This NFT is going to entitle you to an airdrop once a month. You get millions of dollars for the duration of life, as long as the mechanism by which you're receiving this airdrop continues to be legal. Right. So all you need to do is don't fuck it up. Like, don't change the rules so that this becomes illegal, because then we need to comply with the law and just cut off your free money. Since Congress, all you do is look for money, and that's what you do.
That is brilliant. That is actually such an interesting idea. Just moving on a little bit, we don't actually need to go into this. I feel like I should have asked you before, but I wondered if you've been following anything that's been going on in Canada.
I have loosely. I'm ashamed to say I don't know the intricacies, but I work with several people very closely that are in Canada, so I'm aware. But I get different takes of it, right? Like, I'll see the Twitter takes, and they'll just say, like, Canada, the truck drivers, and the cryptocurrencies, right? And then I'll get the takes from my partners like, yeah, they're trying to annex or not annex. What's it? They're trying to break off and make a different country out of Ontario or Quebec or whatever. Like
who the truckers?
I don't know what they're doing. Like they're just so I am ashamed to say I don't fully appreciate the nuance of what's going on. I understand that they're sick of COVID like the rest of the world, and they're using that as an excuse. And the truck drivers are doing the thing that they find most annoying, and they're doing this quite effectively.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I brought this up was because the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said that they'll be freezing the bank accounts of those who are of people who are supposedly involved. So a lot of people are looking to obviously Bitcoin and as an alternative. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that, but if you're not following it, then
no, I did see that, and that actually that explains all of the. If you use crypto, you don't need to get your couples and stuff. Like I was like, there's a lot of tweets about this today.
Yeah,
that's silly, right? Like, I think the first catalyst for Bitcoin, if I remember correctly, was in 2013 when Cyprus was
Cypriot haircut.
They defaulted or thing, and then they froze up bank accounts or cash funds or ATM machines, whatever. Like they did a thing that really pissed off the people that had money there.
They took money from people,
and you couldn't like move your money to a safe place. And so Bitcoin was this really great way to do that. And people are like, wow, you mean this thing works like across countries? Anyway, so I think that that's already in people's heads for a decade. So I'm surprised that Justin said this, but like, I will say this. As I'm following Bitcoin and I'm like early on and I'm looking at the price, it goes up and down, and people are saying this is going to the central bank empower the people and all these things, and you will never need to use a bank account anymore. I'm like, that's a kind of annoying, you activist. Just tone it down a few notches. Your bank's not going anywhere. All right, like relax. And I keep hearing it forever, and it doesn't go away. Even still today, literally. Now we're talking about Canada. Then I start using crypto, and mind you, I live in Mexico City, but I grew up in the U.S., so I international as it is, and I have banking in both countries, make money in both countries. I at one point figure out how to use crypto to facilitate my life, and all of a sudden I find myself like, I get a lot of money in crypto. I'm getting a lot of money with crypto. And so I'm doing all the KYC with all the brokers so I can put it into my bank. And I do that in Mexico and I do that in the US. I'm like putting all this money into my bank. I'm like, cool, this is not just funny money, it's real money. I go to the ATM to withdraw and I can feel it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, why did I just put that into my bank? Like that was kind of silly. Right. And all of a sudden I'm like, you know what, why don't I just keep it all in crypto? And I'll find myself taking the money that's in my bank. So I should put this in crypto. And next thing you know, I'm looking at myself and I'm like, why would I use a bank? Why would anyone ever use a bank? But I don't dare say it out loud because then I'm going to be labeled this activist that says like, oh, shut up. You're just trying to like promote your cryptocurrencies. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like this thing is so much better and it works and it's just quick. Like, how expensive it is. I do these things, and it was in Miami a couple months ago, and we did this big event, and it cost $250,000 to put together. And I'm running all these transactions. It is a ginormous pain in the ass. Like we still haven't been able to do all the transactions because banks, and they get in the way. And I'm like, I'm calling the venue, and I'm like, I'm going to give you like $80,000 deposit, but like my bank's only letting me do it in $5,000 increments using like Venmo or whatever, right? And I'm like, sorry, this is going to take a week to get you your deposit, but like I can't fly to the US to, and I call the bank. I'm like, can I write him a check? They're like, no, because you can set off too many red flags. I'm like, but what red flags? This money came from crypto. I've already set off the flags. Like, trust me. I'm good. Like, and all of a sudden, but all of a sudden I start doing those transactions on crypto, and I'm like, well, that was easy.
Yeah, and I think we will get to a place where we don't necessarily need banks. I mean, I know that it does sound kind of wacky, but like I was in Miami a few months ago and I paid for my accommodation using crypto, the Airbnb, because they saw who I was. So they were like, we'll take Bitcoin. And I was like, I won't give you Bitcoin, but I'll give you ETH. Okay. And they were like, that's fine. We'll take ETH. So I did that. I paid my optician in Miami as well. I needed to get some new contact lenses. So I paid him in Tether. And yeah, I paid for a lot of things. I think even I actually just got another apartment in Miami, and the guy asked me to pay him in Bitcoin, and I was like, absolutely not. So
I mean, yeah, yes and no, because here's the thing. Here's the reason why banks will be really difficult to go away. In order to get rid of banks, you need to get rid of fiat, and you're not getting rid of fiat
in time.
So
you don't think we will eventually?
You can't, because I'll tell you what fiat is really good for. I'm going to tell you and let you in on a secret. Cash is great for crimes and for like laundering money and for doing bad things, and that stuff isn't going away anytime soon.
But that's the funny thing, because there's like this narrative that crypto, especially Bitcoin, is criminal and it helps enable criminal activity. But it's cash. Cash is the best, most anonymous form of payment.
I don't know where did that like who came up with that, like this concept of Bitcoin is anonymous, because like this thing is like, well, you registered an account, it didn't ask me for my name. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, look at these guys that just got nabbed, the Bitfinex, they were all over the news. They had like billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, and they were able to launder a little bit of it, right? And they slipped up at some point, and that's how they got caught. But like what catches my attention is how difficult it was for them to unsuccessfulily, mind you, launder a little bit of that money. Why? Because at some point, if you want to use the money, you have to reveal your identity. This whole idea, coin mixers, all these things, like you have big data stuff, they can figure it all out, right? You have either computers that'll track the things, or computers that can monitor for suspicious activity, just like the NSA is using metadata to figure, they don't need your name in order to know that you're a terrorist, because the patterns, right? The same thing with the Bitcoin, like terrible way to like launder money or to do criminal activity. So that's why I don't think you can get rid of fiat, because there's a huge enterprise.
Because it's useful.
Crime. Yeah.
That's hilarious. That is actually so funny. So just finally then, Jamie, because it's been so interesting speaking with you. I asked people, actually, I'm going to ask you two more questions, which people asked me to ask you. So the first question I ask you is, your father works at the World Economic Forum. So the question is, what does he do there, and how do you feel about him working for that organization?
I did see that question. By the way, you have like the coolest followers, right? Like I've done a gazillion interviews and podcasts and all these things, and the only person that it's ever asked me about my dad has been a Mexican journalist, and that's because my dad is somewhat famous in Mexico. So actually, my dad is this guy right here behind me, the guy that's on the far left, right, whatever side it is. He doesn't work at the World Economic Forum, but he was part of the World Economic Forum. He was like a global leader of tomorrow, which is like now called Young Global Leaders thing. But he is a institutional banker, central bank, whatever. He's run a bunch of national, Mexican national development banks, as well as multilateral banks, and he's worked with, the IMF and all the three-letter acronyms and banks that you can possibly imagine.
Okay.
And he is like crazy conservative, right? Like his house, he buys it in cash, right? And he understands. He's got a PhD in economics. The guy understands things, right? But he's like, yeah, I get the time value of money thing, but yeah, I don't want a mortgage. I want my deed. His cars, he pays in cash. Like all these things, he just does not take risks. Like he was running a bank during the 2008 financial crisis. His bank was the only one, like one of three in the world, that had zero exposure to these asset-backed securities.
Really?
He was like, yeah, those things look like they pay you too much money, and there's no free money. Get them off the books. So he's like the anti-me in that respect, right? Because I'm like, YOLO, where's the thing? Like to the moon. Yeah. Here's my analysis. and I'm kicking Wall Street like in the nuts with all these crazy things that are happening. But he is as smart as he is. He is a strong out of the box thinker. He's always been a very unique problem solver and very unique approach. His style is completely different than mine, but he instilled that unique thinker approach, right? And I think that and he went through the conservative politics kind of avenue, and he's very successful with that. But I think he vicariously like is envious of my position, because I can get away with so much stuff, and I can really ridicule a lot of stuff without having any political blowback. repercussions, right? And oftentimes he actually he's like, you should say this next time that like somebody asks you about that, because he doesn't have the ability to. But
Say it. Yeah.
but no, he's an excellent role model, and we're polar opposite. But he loves what I do secretly. He'll never publicly admit it.
That's brilliant. No, that's brilliant. And then the final question was, what is the next GME?
It's a good question. It's tricky. So GME, like, I don't know. I don't know what it is, and it's impossible to tell. I can tell you kind of what are the telltale signs as it's building up, but like there is no next GME, because prior to GME, there wasn't necessarily a stock. There was I don't know, the infinite margin thing that I told you about. And prior to that, there was like this box spreads thing, or like there's always people that are, what was the one that I saw the other day? One that dealt with warrants on the Donald Trump SPAC, right? This was an interesting ARB where you have the SPAC, which is like a stock, we'll just call it that. Yeah. It trades a certain amount, but the warrants are trading at another amount. And there's a reason for that, but that reason is dumb. And therefore it legitimately is a free trade for anyone that knows how to buy one and sell the other one. That's the next GME, right? Like it's this cheat code where there's free money. It's on the table. GME was not just a stock whose price went up. It was a stock whose price went astronomically up, like a lot. And the reason why that went up so much had to do with a lot of factors outside of just people buying it, which dealt with the short sellers with these stock options, whatever. The market has learned from their from what happened.
Their power.
They won't allow that to happen again using that same maneuver. But I'll tell you what the things, if you start seeing a lot of chatter, stocks are going up, and you see everyone's talking about it everywhere, and you start seeing it on the news, there's your next GME.
Okay, well, I will have to keep my eyes open for it, because I need to have a bite of this pie. I think that's what they say, something like that. Jaime, where can people follow you? How can they join Wall Street Bets? Just show yourself for us.
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter. It's at WallStreetBets, all spelled out. Or the website that I'm working with is WallStreetBets.net. As far as where can they join Wall Street Bets, like there's the Reddit, there's Discord, there's Telegram, there's TikTok, there's the, find the one you like, Facebook, and it's all the same things for different countries. There's Wall Street Bets India and China and South Korea, and then there's like specific to assets like silver and gold. So just Google it and enjoy.
That's amazing. You've just created an entire movement. And I'm really just like in awe of the whole movement and everything that it represents. And I think, how it's sort of empowering. I do like the narrative of it empowers the little man, because I think it is true. And I think it's brilliant. So Jaime, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to tune in next week, for another brilliant guest. Until next time, we'll see you then.